In 1982, the King County Sheriff's Office in Seattle begins receiving reports of young women disappearing along the banks of the Green River and its surrounding industrial zones. Over the next 2 decades, more than 40 bodies, many of them so decomposed as to be barely identifiable, are discovered dumped in the water and the ravines nearby. For years, the case remains one of the most baffling serial killer investigations in American history. Dozens of victims, minimal physical evidence, scattered crime scenes across a sprawling geography, and a killer who leaves no pattern that investigators can easily follow. The victims are overwhelmingly young, poor, homeless, or engaged in sex work, the women that society often overlooks until they disappear. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, investigators pursue hundreds of suspects. Polygraph tests are administered to dozens of men. Task forces are assembled and disbanded. The case generates media attention in waves, but each wave crests and recedes without resolution. What makes the Green River Killer investigation so difficult is not the absence of bodies, but the absence of certainty. Without clear forensic links between the murders, without a consistent modus operandi, investigators struggle to build a coherent theory of the killings. Some victims may have been killed by different perpetrators. The geographic spread makes it hard to coordinate investigation across jurisdictions. Years pass. New victims continue to surface. Gary Leon Ridgway is a truck painter from Seattle, a man living a quiet, seemingly unremarkable life. He is married, he holds steady employment, he does not fit the profile of a serial killer that law enforcement has been searching for. He is questioned early in the investigation, and in 1984, he passes a polygraph test and slides off the suspect list. In 1987, detectives collect a saliva sample from him under court order. Then, the trail goes quiet for 14 years. In 2001, new DNA technology finally catches up with that sample. When investigators retest evidence from the Green River victims, Gary Ridgway's DNA matches multiple murders. He is arrested on November 30th, 2001. Facing DNA, evidence that connects him to multiple murders, Ridgway confesses, but not to the prosecutors who arrested him initially. Instead, in a carefully orchestrated arrangement, he agrees to cooperate with investigators in exchange for a life sentence without parole rather than the death penalty. The resulting interviews and confession are extraordinary. Ridgway pleads guilty in 2003 to 48 murders, then in 2011 to a 49th, while telling detectives the true number is closer to 70 or 80. Many of the victims he killed while they were engaged in sex work along stretches of highway. He approached them, paid for sexual acts, then strangled them and discarded their bodies in the river. Ridgway describes victim after victim with a flatness and detachment that suggests neither remorse nor triumph, merely a recitation of facts. By some accounts, he may have killed far more than even he remembers, possibly well over 70. What emerges from Ridgway's confession is a pattern defined by access and invisibility. He targeted women on the margins, sex workers, runaways, drug-addicted young women, precisely because their disappearance would be slower to draw police attention than the abduction of a woman from a more privileged background. Law enforcement, for their part, was slower to prioritize cases involving victims in the sex trade, contributing to a climate where Ridgway could operate with relative impunity for decades. His confession forces a reckoning with this reality. The women he killed were considered disposable by society, and that disposability had made them vulnerable to someone who killed with the methodical precision of a man performing a job. Gary Ridgway is serving a life sentence at a Washington state penitentiary, where he remains alive, one of the longest incarcerated serial killers in American history and the one credited with the most confirmed victims. Yet the Green River Killer case remains partially unsolved. Investigators believe Ridgway may have killed far more women than he has confessed to, and they continue to work cases involving unidentified remains found in the Pacific Northwest. His confession raised enduring questions about the nature of serial murder in America, about the vulnerability of women in poverty and sex work, and about the ways law enforcement prioritization shapes which crimes get solved and which are allowed to persist. Ridgway's case stands as a warning that the most prolific killers can hide in plain sight for decades if their victims are systematically undervalued. The story of Gary Ridgway is, in many ways, a story about what we choose to see and what we choose to ignore. A man killed 49 women, possibly more, over nearly 2 decades before he was caught. He lived a seemingly normal life. He had a job, a family, a place in his community, and nobody connected the dots until DNA technology made the pattern undeniable. The case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about whose deaths we mourn, whose disappearances we investigate with urgency, and whose lives we allow to be treated as disposable. If you want the next case file, subscribe. New files unlock every Tuesday